How's it going, NPA fans? Lynx Forte here, aka Lee Corso. Today I have my co-host Levinet.
Hello. Lebanon, aka Warfare 120, back in the house. We also have a third guest. Is that correct, Lynxy?
That's correct. We have Midnite Zero joining us this week.
What is up, heroes? This is Midnite Zero, and yeah, I'm glad to be back on this Pick'em crew. It's exciting. So,
and we're hoping no problem, and we're glad to have you here, and we're hoping to have a great show, make some good picks, and hopefully no one gets hurt in between.
Keyword is hopefully. When we have all these kind of games going on, Lynx, it's interesting to always get to see what's going on, and with each and every single one of these matchups, we always want every single coach to do their best and put their best foot forward each and every week. I mean, we want all the coaches to do their best, but obviously we have to be a little cruel and pick one over the other. So, Lynxy, let's get us started off, please.
All right, so with our first matchup, we have the Iowa Haluchas versus the Duke City Dublades. Looking at this matchup personally, I really like how Radioactive has a rain team going in this matchup, but I think he has to really be careful because it could be really tempting to bring Pelipper in on Mega Venusaur. And then he also has Jolteon, who can, just run rampant with the rain on the other side. So what is your opinions on this matchup, Midnite?
To be honest, I think the Iowa Haluchas actually have the team build matchup here. They have the stronger team, in my opinion. They can outpower the Duke City Blades defensive cores. But having watched the first couple weeks, I'm not 100% sure Radioactive is actually fully comfortable with such a rain team. I know in the first week he struggled with team building, and he brought that, he upped his game for team building the second week. But again, he didn't really play it through to its fullest potential. So I'm not sure whether or not he'll actually be able to take full advantage of his team matchup advantage this potential week. So that's why I'm leaning towards the Duke City Blades.
It's been a really interesting.
What are your opinions?
It's been a really interesting situation so far, and you're right, absolutely. For him to pick the Blades, this is very much a toss-up kind of thing for what we're going to see so far this week, as far as what's going on. Both of these teams, coaches have really had kind of that rocky start. Volskyler showed issues with double checking his prep. And then, of course, just being able to stick in a match. And then the Iowa Haluchas, of course, have a very awkward and overexposed team in a lot of ways. Remember, we talked about this last week with 4 water types, 3 psychic types. It's a little just he loves those 2 types, guys, and that can obviously affect your prep right here. With Duke City having Jolteon, with Duke City having Mega Venusaur, it could work out in Duke City's favor. But personally, I just feel like, as far as who was more capable last week, who was able to really put down the battle last week, I feel like I got to give the edge to Iowa in this matchup, believe it or not. What about yourself, Lynx?
Yeah, I picked Iowa as well, and as you were saying, it's a toss-up matchup, and our fellow analysts believe that as well. It is split down the middle, 4-4.
Absolutely. So, but Vol, please prove us wrong in this situation. We like I said, whenever we pick somebody over the other person, we're trying to do is, we got any weakness we see in a coach, we have to be able to utilize that to help us make these tough calls, because at the end of the day, it's a tough call each week, right, Lynxy?
It very much is. How are you feeling about this matchup overall, Midnite? I know you said you're picking Duke City, but
yeah, again, I'm gonna end up picking up Duke City Blades, and that's again more so not because of the matchup, but because of how I see each coach in interpreting the battle. I know Duke City Blades had some difficulty with, actually getting their Pokemon prepped to the battle. So I can't really fault that on, as representative of the skill or the coach's ability to actually use the team they have. I still think Bull, coach of the Duke City Blades, is getting comfortable with the team, but more so than that, I think the coach of the Iowa Haluchas, Radioactive, is getting comfortable with competitive battling in general. So I think the Duke City Blades have a little bit of a skill advantage here, and while not maybe having the most advantageous team, we'll be able to utilize it more effectively.
Anyway, let's go on to our next matchup, my friend, at this point. Like I said, guys, we expect this to be kind of a slobber knocker. It could go either way, but at the end of the day, it's one of those we just got to see what happens, man. What's the next matchup, Lynxy?
All right, our next matchup is Philadelphia versus Adelaide, Chris Cobain versus Cressel Key. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Zero?
Now, at the very beginning of the season, I looked at the Philadelphia Braveries and I said, wow, this team's got a lot of power. I don't see a ton of synergy, obviously, amongst the first picks, amongst the top picks. There is some, but this is a team we're going to have to see whether or not Chris Cobain, the coach of the Philadelphia Braveries, is actually going to be able to mesh with the play style that his team lends itself towards. And he has totally proven that he can. And that's why I'm very confident going into this matchup that he's got the advantage here. He's comfortable with his offense. offense that can just straight up outpower the Adelaide Umbreons' relatively weaker defenses. Though I know both coaches are, great players and are going to bring their best to the table, I think the Philadelphia Bravers are simply just going to outpower everything that the Umbreons can try to do. Between Scizor and Zygarde alone, I think almost every Pokemon is covered for on the Umbreons team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I looked at this matchup versus power versus creativity, and I just have to give the edge to power. So I'm definitely going to choose Chris Cobain in this matchup. And as you said, the Mega Scizor can be key, right along with Zygarde. How are you feeling about this, Levitt?
Well, absolutely. Cobain, both prior weeks has shown, masterful team prep. He's been able to absolutely create, you were talking about synergy off the draft. Sometimes, synergy is in the eye of the beholder. Crack cocaine and heroin don't always mix together very well, but occasionally they can be explosive. And that's what we're seeing right here with Cobain's offensive situations. He's able to utilize U-turn offensive pressure and be able to put that offensive pressure onto his opponent every single week. If you're playing passive against him, he's going to be able to get you. If you're playing weird against him, he's going to be able to get you. Last week, we saw him utilize his Thunderous Tea to be able to decimate a Victini team, to be able to decimate it and run past it and be able to get over a player who plays a little bit of a slower game. Philadelphia plays a bit of a higher pressure kind of offensive core, and whenever he had Dugtrio and Zygarde, I figured he was going to bring both of those to deal with Victini, and he did. And you know what? That just shows that he's got his prep game on point each week to week. And this week right here is going to be kind of no different. Cressel Key's a good, confident battler, but at the end of the day, we know that, hey, Cress, you called it on yourself when it happened. You had a couple of oopsie moments. It happens. We love you still, but at the end of the day, when you have an oopsie moment, it provides your opponent an opening. If you have the right opponent, like someone like Cobain, he's gonna keep hitting you whenever you make the oopsie moment. You have a great hyper offensive core situation here with Azumarill, with Salazzle, and then you have, of course, the great Pokemon that can finish it off and be the sitter at the end of the match in Celesteela. But at the end of the day, you didn't really bring Celesteela last week, which was okay. We're not counting it out for that, but it could have really changed a lot of things for you going forward. At least I think so. As far as being able to be a last ditch effort kind of Pokemon. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think that the prep game of Cobain is going to be way on point, and it's going to be able to come down to essentially just who can do what, when, where, and why. I feel like it's going to be another big week for Thunderous Therian. Let's see what happens. I feel like Cobain goes 3-0 after this matchup.
And our analysts tend to agree with you. 6-2 in favor of Chris Cobain.
This is going to be, like I said, a very interesting match. I feel like this one will get nowhere close to the timer. This one will be timer is always a looming factor whenever you're doing cartridge leagues versus showdown leagues, which is one thing that's very interesting to note. The timer does play a factor in some matchups, but this will not be one where the timer even comes close. I bet you it's done in 25 to 30 minutes.
Couldn't agree more.
I really hope so.
And not because one coach bodies the other coach, just because both of their play styles are going to be aggressive enough to where, exactly. The battle will be half animations, half turn time, not 85% turn time, 20% animations.
Gotcha. All right, so our next matchup: Duncan Knee Deep and the Free State Torcats versus the Commissioner Jodor and the Seattle Sea Kings. How are things looking for you here, Zero?
So in this one, the matchup is interesting. Overall, I don't think the Free State Torcats have great type coverage, especially when it comes to defense. That said, looking at the Seattle Sea Kings, it's like, what answer does Duncan Knee Deep have for Landorus T? Landorus T plays such an important role in this matchup, but I think at the end of the day, between the Free State Torcats, multiple offensive powerhouses, especially with the potential to raise speed with something like Tailwind from something like Togetic or Xatu. I think that sort of speed control mixed with the straight up offense that can outpower a lot of the walls that Jodor has, I think that's going to give the Torcats a bit of an edge this week.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to agree with you there. I looked at this matchup and said, Duncan has some really offensive powerhouses, and he showed that last week going up against the Iowa Haluchas. And then I kind of looked at Jodor's team. He can go defensive, he can go offensive, or he can stick with balance. But I have to give the fact that Duncan's team being offensive, I gave him that advantage in this matchup.
One other thing to note real quickly is that when you actually look at these two teams, I noticed that when the matchups aren't super lined up, when there is some sort of exploitable big weakness on either team that, a coach needs to particularly prep for, I've noticed that during the matches so far, Jodor tends to get a little scrambled in the middle of matches when things don't go according to plan. He can get a little distraught, whereas Duncan Deep seems to stay a little bit more calm, a little bit more cool and collected. And if things don't go according to plan, which they very well might not in such a creative league or format as the counter league format, I think he'll be able to keep it together and try to improvise more so and have backup plans.
And more of that, I think,
might not.
More of those has to come down to what you see with Free State being normative in the free for all kind of the roulette free for all world. As we know, Duncan Deep is the creator of the roulette free for all app, which, like I said, when you're doing something of that kind of nature, you're always seeing the most random shiznickle ever. I mean, there is no prep or whatnot. So what I'm trying to say is essentially he's used to playing jazz while Jodor's just used to playing EDM. It's a bit more. He's used to a bit more rhythm and control, while Duncan's a bit more used to being able to adapt on the fly. Now, that being said, I give Jodor the clear-cut advantage right here, and it's one thing in particular. It's Mega Sableye. Mega Sableye will be the difference maker this week. If he uses Mega Sableye correctly, he effectively neutralizes Garchomp, effectively neutralizes Alakazam, and effectively neutralizes Kartana. He can do all three of those things and stop all three of those Pokemon with that one Pokemon, Mega Sableye. If he can do that, it opens up lanes for him to use Creognal, to use Landorus T, and of course Togekiss at the later points of the matchup. And that's going to be what the key factor is right here. Is the Seattle Sea Kings roster going to be able to be complementarian to the Mega Sableye offensive effort? And yes, I said offensive effort. This Mega Sableye is not going to be a passive Mega Sableye this week. It's going to be utilized to come into Kartana and hit HP Fire. It's going to be utilized to come into Garchomp and possibly wall it out over a long period of time. It's going to be utilized to take down Alakazam after about two turns of play out. That's going to be the focus point of this match this week for the Seattle Sea Kings. Is can they utilize Mega Sableye? If they do that, which I expect Jodor to do so, he was very excited to draft Mega Sableye, Jodor wins this match. Boom shakalaka.
All right, so we got a boom shakalaka. We got some music references. Any other references you want to throw out there?
You're talking to me? I was getting ready to ask you what your thoughts are on the match. Come on now, Lynxy. Come on now, Lynxy. I can't do all the talking up in here.
I mean, I have Free State in this matchup, so.
Well, please explain me why. What is your thoughts on that process, buddy?
I'm just going offense versus, the unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Duncan's team can be very offensive. He showed that last week. And as it was brought up, him being the creator of the free-for-all format and the randomness of the free-for-all format, I just like that it's hard to predict what he may do. Like last week, he said he was having some issues. He brought some standard sets, and I felt like him bringing standard was hard to predict, and it just worked to his advantage. And he won, 4-0?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's in Duncan's favor right now because no one knows what to expect. It's still early in the season. No one knows what to expect from Duncan. So I think this is still his thing to win.
Not to mention, I think this week we might actually see Ditto make an appearance, in that Landorus T is arguably one of the best counters to Landorus T. Metagross walls Metagross. Typhlosion isn't going to be doing a lot to Typhlosion. I think a lot of Jodor's team members are actually really good at countering themselves. So Ditto can be used. Obviously, it's very reflective of the skill of the battler using Ditto. Ditto, can't just be brought to battle and used willy-nilly. It's not one of those Pokemon you can clicklessly mine buttons with. You have to very carefully think about it, and I think it might actually show or make an appearance. And given Duncan's skill, I think it can be utilized incredibly effectively in this matchup. And outside of that, Garchomp and Alakazam, between the two of them, pretty much handle all of Jodor's team. So if Jodor doesn't go on the offensive and play aggressively to get rid of that Alakazam or to neuter that Garchomp with maybe a Will-O-Wisp, it's going to be a really difficult time just fighting back against all that offensive pressure.
Absolutely. But
that's why I'm
as far as the overall analysts, it actually is a split roster, so suck it, you two. No. At the end of the day, Jodor, don't fire me. See, I voted for you this week. Come on, man, you can't fire me now. But anyway, when it comes down to it, is going to be that kind of questionable matchup. Is of just what is versus what could be. And like I said, I feel one way. These two chicken sandwiches don't feel that way at all. They can just go eat sand for all I care. But that's just what we're going to see right here. And Duncan prove us wrong. Jodo proved me right.
Duncan prove you wrong.
Exactly, right?
Right.
Anyway.
All right, so our next matchup here, New Orleans Pelicans versus the LA Landers, in a matchup to where a lot was expected from John versus Jerry Oak, who has had a very surprising showing in his first 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on this, Zero?
Again, you're probably hearing a common theme with a lot of my picks. So, it's pretty much, can one team handle offensive pressure from the other? So in order to be like a well-balanced and versatile team, or an effective team in the league format, I think you need to have multiple modes. I think you need to be able to run a defensive core that can handle offensive threats if the opponent's team decides to run such offense, or if you know that they like to run such offense. We also need to have more damage output. And that's what I'm seeing missing here with the Los Angeles Landers. You look at their team and they have some defensive cores that are defensive, are good, and can maybe handle a moderate amount of offense from the New Orleans Pelicans, but they're not enough to really take on everything that the Pelicans can bring with Victini, slow, really strong threats like Reuniclus, Decidueye, which can, baton pass multiple boosts to various Pokemon on the team. Whereas if the Landers want to run more offense, they really don't have the damage output to do so in a threatening manner. Outside of Tapu Koko, maybe a Scarf Dodrio, Starmie can be strong, but outside of that, it's just not really threatening to the New Orleans Pelicans. And that's why my pick is leaning towards the Pelicans.
The biggest thing about this matchup overall, guys, is what I've always talked about when it comes to someone like John. John's a great battler, but he will lose the battle for himself so many times in each season. It's just the way it works out for how he plays. He loses battles for himself at times. And it's because he'll overpredict, or he'll overvalue something, or not think, or overassume that this person's not running this move or running this move, and that can really screw you up sometimes. And here's the thing, guys, I 100% believe that this is the week that we see Gliscor with Samurott paired up this week on Jerry Oak's roster. Samurott is going to be utilized this week very well. Two reasons why. New Orleans Pelicans love themselves to run Reuniclus. What does Samurott have? Megahorn. And you know what also is out there? We have to deal with the Victini situation. Samurott doesn't have to outspeed Victini to be able to take care of it, because it does have coverage with Aqua Jet. It's going to be a very interesting matchup going forward. And the question is that will the New Orleans over or underestimate Samurott when it comes this week? I 100% see Samurott coming this week. I can't think of a better week for Jerry Oak to unleash it this week than ever in this season than to unleash it this very week. He will unleash Samurott this week. Samurott will. I don't think Samurott will pick up 2 or 3 kills, but at the same time, it'll be very key in Jerry Oak winning this matchup this week. Samurott wins the match for Jerry Oak.
Here's the question: Do you think Samurott's coming this week?
I think Samurott's coming this week. I think Samurott's coming this week. I know.
I don't know if I got it the first time.
I know if I wasn't very clear right there. I want to apologize if I wasn't very clear right there, but Samurott's coming this week. I apologize if I wasn't very clear right there. So forgive me.
All right, so now that we know that Samurott's coming this week, I do want to just clarify the reason I am Lee Corso, because I get to allow you guys to make all the deep analysis, and I can just throw a gut pick out there, which is what I'm going to do this week, sort of. Jerry Oak has controlled both of the battles so far this season, and we all know, if you can control the battle, barring any hacks, you typically come away with the win, and I think that's what's going to tip the scale in Jerry Oak's favor this week. All right, and so our fellow analysts are actually leaning towards John 5-3 in this matchup. I'm just hoping Jerry Oaks proves them wrong.
It's going to be a very interesting one to see how this goes down for sure, for real. And like I said, I want to clarify one thing. I did have on the screen for the past 55 minutes. I showed the Pelicans being 0-2. I apologize. Sometimes we misread our ledgers and have things marked down wrong. When 24 teams, a few ledger marks are going to be issues on there. The Pelicans are 1-1 on this season, so please forgive me for that right there, guys. Editorial issue right there. Anyway, moving on. Let's move on.
All right, so our next matchup here, we have the Miami Dolphins versus the Milwaukee Sauce Bucks. What are you seeing in the Zero?
Again, The Dom fans just outpower very easily. I think you get some speed control, you outspeed any threat that the Sawsbucks can bring, which really boils down to just Scarf circuitry in my opinion. And between Mega Aerodactyl and Kingdra, you pretty much take everything down. Mega Aerodactyl, throw, Earthquake or Stone Edge, Aerial Ace, Crunch, Thunderfang, and you're hitting almost every single Pokemon on the Sawsbucks super effectively. And again, all of these Pokemon are relatively slow. All it takes is a Roserade with some hazards to weaken things down, and then an easy Mega Aerodactyl or Kingdra sweep, in my opinion. So, again, the only real hope I see for the Sawsbucks in this matchup is a Scarf Circuitry, or maybe a Nasty Plot Pass Circuitry from Celebi, something like that. Or maybe even Trick Room from Mimikyu. If you can pull a Trick Room to reverse the potential speed that the Donphans could try to use to overpower the Sawsbucks in this matchup, I think that's the only real out the Milwaukee Sawsbucks have had. That said, I haven't seen an incredible amount of creativity and team building from the Sawsbucks thus far, so I'm not sure if they'll be able to actually follow through on such a prospect.
Look, when it comes down to it, guys, you gotta understand the one thing about Battler X. Battler X is crazy. Like he will make you just wonder about yourself sometimes. And like I said, we saw that last week against the Clinks. Granted, it did come down to a couple weird, awkward rolls. I remember reading some things about that where a bunch of people were, Steve was being very, very gracious in his victory, saying, it just came down to this, came down to that. We get it. It happens that way. Look, here is the biscuit. All right. Golisopod is ugly. It's mean. It's going to be able to pop some chickens right here. And here's the big thing that I wonder when it comes to Miami. I love Kyle A. He's a friend of mine. But last week we saw him have a problem get to deal with one Scarfed electric Pokemon. That's right. One Scarfed electric Pokemon rocked his biscuit. So you talk about, the only saving grace of Milwaukee is a Scarf Circuitry. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing though, is that Midnite. What was the one thing that absolutely destroyed his roster last week? Was it a Scarfed electric Pokemon?
It was indeed. I would argue, of course, that's also because he didn't bring any speed control with Rain plus Kingdra.
You're correct. He brought zero speed control last week. In fact, I remember listening to him during his actual game battle. Tornadus T and Mega Aerodactyl were both slower than a non-scarfed Galvantula in that matchup. Now not Mega Aerodactyl wasn't slower than a non-scarfed Galvantula, but Tornadus T was slower than a non-scarfed Galvantula. I remember him talking about this during the actual match, which means to me that he sacrificed speed on two of his fastest Pokemon in order to try to overcompensate for other things. Granted, I get it. He was trying to basically be able to have the correct bulk to be able to take hits from those Pokemon that were going to be able to hit him with Thunderbolts, discharges, what have you. But at the end of the day, it didn't work in his favor and resulted in a close, narrow loss. This is my question mark right here, is that, we saw that, like I said, he had that issue last week with a Scarfed Electric-type Pokemon. Will he have this issue again? Yeah, I could see him having the issue quite obviously again if he does not come into it with a fresh mindset and really just wipe away the biscuit and get something going. The key to this matchup, in my opinion, is does he bring Scarfed Roserade? If he brings Scarfed Roserade, I feel like he has himself an opportunity to be able to kick some chickens. That's really my question mark going forward. But also, more importantly, what is the actual top speed of Circuitry, if I remember correctly? It's like 292.
It's 291.
291. 291.
Yeah, I've got in another draft league, so.
291 times 1.5 is 436. Do you know what Mega Aerodactyl's top speed is? I'm correct. It's 430.
Sure
it's 438, if I remember correctly. Mega Aerodactyl. I'm gonna look this up real fast. I apologize for not having this on the top of my head, but that's the thing is that Choice Scarfed Circuitry has an absolute top speed of with the scarf of 437 if you round up, which they never do. And actually, Mega Aerodactyl was 438, so I was correct right there. So you're in this situation. If Kyle A does not put 100% full speed investment on Mega Aerodactyl, he's opening himself up for an issue. That's just the way it's going to be. So that's going to be the question right here. And when it comes down to it, I think that he's going to not do it, or at least hold back enough speed investment to where a Choice Scarf Circuitry rocks his biscuit. I'm going with Milwaukee in this match.
Okay. I mean, I picked Miami purely because it's going to be speed control. That's Kyle has to do. I think Kyle keeps the speed control on his side. The issue is, does he keep the offensive pressure on Steve to, avoid Steve setting up, whether it be with a nasty plot, baton pass, a nasty baton pass Celebi, or even Z electric terrain circuitry. Kyle has to keep the offensive pressure on Steve to, just to win this battle. And I think he has the Pokemon to do so. So I'm going to pick Kyle in this matchup.
And you're right. He does have offensive pressure Pokemon. It's hard to really say that when you have something like Tornadus Tita, which can, give you a fast U-turn combo. You're right. It does have offensive pressure. I'm a little curious about his ability to overcome scarfed electric types after last week's match, and we're gonna have to see how that works out going forward. But the overall analysts are a little split in this match, if I remember correctly. We're 5-3 total in favor of Milwaukee. So I just happened to get again on the call with the two guys who just don't want to agree with me, man. Good night. What is with you guys? We have to fire both of you and get somebody else in here for a change. Good night.
Let's see who's right and who's wrong first.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, all right. I see how it is. No, it's all good though.
So in our next matchup here, we have Rochester Ride-Ons? Yeah, Rochester Ride-Ons versus the New York Clinks. And in this one, I think this battle is going to come down to Palm getting webs up and keeping them on the field just to cripple Mega Zam. I know we had a talk last week about, him being a little too reliant on webs, but I think that could be a key matchup point in this battle. What are you saying in the Zero?
Yeah, this one was really difficult for me. I do think Mega Alakazam has an incredible matchup, and so speed control is going to be really important with that. Of course, there are forms of priority and such, like Emboar with Sucker Punch, which can easily take down Mega Alakazam. But I do think if speed control is on the side of the Clinks, they do have the offensive matchup and can take hits from the few threats that the Rhydons do have on the offensive side. So overall, it's definitely a tough pick, but if I had to choose, I would pick the Clinks here.
Well, I'm going to disagree and pick Rochester.
You guys are just both
fair enough.
You guys are trying to bicker and argue up in here. I see how it is, but no, I'm kind of on Midnite's side in this matchup when it comes down to you look at the Clinks roster. They've had an unlucky first two matches, and they really played a lot better of a matchup the second week. Week one against T-Train, he was playing against somebody who was just superior in every way, as far as a team, as far as a battle, and it was one of those where the New York just didn't have a shot. I mean, it was even with the extreme hacks, he couldn't bring it back. I mean, that's just how severely outmatched he was in that situation. That's no offense to you, Papa C. You were there, you saw it. And when it comes down to it this week, though, he's in a lot better of a situation versus Rochester. All right, Rochester, like I said, we do have the speed questions. We do have the web questions. You got to deal with Mega Zam. Here's the thing, though, is that Mega Zam, we're going to see Focus Blast on Mega Zam this week. We're going to see Focus Blast on Mega Zam, and I think it's going to come down to Focus Miss. Is it going to be that kind of thing?
And I don't know if we're really going to see Focus Blast here.
Dude,
I think we're going to see more Dazzling Gleam. I think we're going to see Psychic. I think we're going to see Energy Ball, and then maybe Substitute or Hidden Power Fire, whether to deal with Emboar or Forretress, respectively.
Oh yeah. Please. I think you're looking at the wrong rosters right there. But okay. He's fighting against Kieran Black this week. He's running Hidden Path. He's running Hit Focus Blast. So, like I said, that's going to be what we're going to see this week. We're going to probably see a Choice Scarf Jirachi. You just click an Iron Head just for a couple turns just to try to get something going right there. It's going to be one of those kind of interesting matchups where we just don't really understand what's going to happen going forward. But at the end of the day, I really do feel like that Big Palm does rely on what he can stack on the field. He's going to have to rely on what he stacks in the field to have a fair play matchup. And if we see the right set from Gligar, if we see the right set from Zapdos, we could easily never have to worry about hazards on the Clink side of the field. And with Klefki in that mix-up, we never know what's going to happen. So I feel like as far as overall control of your opponents, the Clinks have the better matchup here, and they're going to be able to pull ahead with a win this week. Sorry, Big Palm.
Well, our fellow analysts do agree with both of you, and New York Clinks are leading 5-3.
Absolutely.
I do think I'm going to be right, though. I think Palm's going to pull out this one.
Hey, if you do, you're going to win. You're going to win a game of most of the pack.
If you believe that, you should vote that way, which is good.
I did vote that way.
Wait, you did?
So good.
You did?
Yeah.
Holy cow! This is surprising. What are we doing here? We should be like analysts or something, man. Good night. Anyway,
So our next matchup, it's a very interesting one. We have the Chicago Cub Chews versus the Leicester City Pokemon Club. And I do want to point out that 2 weeks in a row, Magearna has been paralyzed, and 2 weeks in a row, it has been fully paralyzed. It hasn't caused a loss, but is that something we have to worry about going forward?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. I mean, I wouldn't want any particular coach to rely on paralyzing Magearna as a strategy to entrust all of the fate of the match or something like that in paralysis like that. Though I think it has been really unfortunate for Magearna in the Leicester City Pokemon Club over the past couple weeks. I think more importantly, Magearna is easily one of the biggest threats, one of the all-stars of the Leicester City team. However, in this particular matchup, it's probably not going to be as important. And that's simply due to the presence of Arcanine and Mega Metagross. And again, I think every single week we're going to be asking the same question when we think about whether or not the Chicago Cub Chews are going to win. And it's going to be, does the opposing team have a Mega Metagross counter? If yes, okay, then we can get into the rest of the conversation. If no, well, probably GG.
I don't even think you necessarily need a or I don't even think it comes down to a Mega Metagross counter. I think it comes down to is how much does you prep, or how much does your prep for Mega Metagross hurt you? Like we saw last week, Dan had some prep for Mega Metagross, but in the end, it was, I can't even think of what Pokemon it was. The dark fighting type. Oh my gosh, you guys are going to kill me for this.
Pangoro.
There we go, Pangoro. Pangoro was the one that hurt him. And so it's you prep for Mega Metagross, but something else kills you. And I think that's going to play into Elliott going forward. And I give him the advantage in this matchup, not only for Mega Metagross, but for his entire team and the way he's played the team.
Right. And here's my thoughts on this matchup when it comes down to it, guys. Here's the thing, is that T-Train, we have seen him be able to come back from extreme opposition in the last 2 weeks. Now, granted, last week was a timer stall win, okay? And now that it wasn't him timer stalling, mind you, it was a timeout. Now, and the thing is, if you go back and watch the match, San Diego, the chart Vump will actually be the one to tell you that, hey, the timeout was because of him. If you remember him listening to the match. Now, like I said, he was extremely far down at that point, had an idea of how he could have come back and win, but at the same time, it was him who was taking, the full time at the very beginning of the match for each turn, because he was just so racked up in, okay, how's this going to work? How's this going to work? That it ended up causing him to be able to force to be able to go all the way to the distance. And here's the thing, man. I fully see T-Train being able to utilize several Pokemon to be able to deal with Mega Metagross. Here's the big thing that so far has not hindered Galactic Elliott, that I think will start to hinder him as the season wears on. The question of, why don't I bring Mega Metagross? That'll be the hardest question for him to answer every single week, is the question of, why don't I bring Mega Metagross? Every week he's going to try to find a way mentally to bring Mega Metagross. Because why wouldn't you? It's kind of like when you have Victini. It's a Pokemon that just is over-centralizing for your opponent, and so it's over-centralizing for you also, because every single week you're just like, well, I mean, why shouldn't I bring it? Why don't I bring this Pokemon? And I feel
that's
like
a pretty good problem to have.
It is a good problem.
I have a Pokemon that's so strong, that's so good every single week. It's so difficult for me not to bring it.
Well,
and my life is so tough.
That's the thing, though, is that you have to at some point know when to turn it down, because that actually does play into overall game prep. You say we talk about Magearna. Magearna, you're correct. If Magearna can get out there, and the thing is that Magearna does get outsped by Mega Metagross. Mega Metagross does carry Earthquake very often. It's going to be a Pokemon that is not going to be fun for Magearna to try to deal with. That's the thing, though, is that Magearna still is going to come because it deals with with Salamence. It takes care of Clefable. It's too good to leave off the roster this week. It's kind of like Mega Metagross in that regard, but T-Train does have other things to be able to deal with Mega Metagross for him. He's gonna try to use some tactics with Porygon 2. We saw this last week. Porygon 2 literally was carrying Shadow Ball. I think it was carrying Shadow Ball, Toxic, and T-Wave, and then Recover. Yeah. That was his full set: Shadow Ball, Toxic, T-Wave, Recover. And you know what? I could see that very same set coming this week. I could see that very same set coming this week to try to utilize Porygon 2 to stop Salamence, to stop Mega Metagross. It's a very good set. Not only that, remember guys, Sneasel is a 361, but of course it gets one shot by a Bullet Punch. So there's that to think about right there, unless you go with a Focus Sash. So there's always that aspect to keep in mind. He also has Druddigan, which as we all know, Rough Skin Rocky Helmet Druddigan is a great way to basically wear down any contact-based opponent. So, in summation, we really don't know who's going to be able to do this, that, or the other. But I wouldn't be shocked if T-Train comes up with some excellent strategy like he's shown the past 2 weeks. Because remember, his strategies are not relying upon one Pokemon. They're not relying upon a hacks-free match. His strategies are just dominant when it comes down to it. And I feel like he's going to put in the work, and he's going to get the job done. I got to go with Leicester City. You haven't let me down yet. You're not going to let me down this week.
So you're saying Magearna is a very important Pokemon. Is it possible we see Shift Gear this week?
I don't think we're going to see Shift Gear this week, because after one Shift Gear, you still don't have to be Mega Metagross, if I remember correctly. At 262 times 1.5 equals... Actually, you do it.
No, it does.
393, yeah. You do. That's if he goes for a full. That's if he goes for a full with nature speed.
He has to be max speed.
I don't know though. Here's the thing: is that it does help him out going forward because it does put him in a situation where he's free and doesn't have to worry about a Z move, a Z Fire Blast from Salamence. So actually, you could very well see a Shift Gear this week with a speed invested in Magearna, just because it would help him be able to deal with a possible Z attack from Salamence, from possibly being able to outspeed Mega Metagross, and if for a chip damage situation, even though Magearna really doesn't have too many things ready from the stretch to be able to deal with it. I feel like Magearna's going to have a struggling a 4-move syndrome this week, but he's not going to rely on Magearna. I feel like Choice Scarf Manectric does more work this week than Magearna does overall on the scoreboard.
All right. Well, you are in the minority in this pick.
I am.
It is 6-2 in favor of Chicago.
I am in the minority here, and I am totally okay with being able to take you guys' scalps this week on this one.
All right. So we are in a bit of a time crunch, so we're going to try to make these last few picks kind of quick. Next up is the Hampshire Haunters versus the Tampa Bay Luxrays. And who are you guys taking in this one?
I'm going to be frank. The Haunters haven't really won my confidence yet. I've watched the first couple of weeks, and it's not that they've been playing poorly. It's not that they haven't tried to think outside the box and bringing different sets to each match, but they really haven't won me over yet. Whereas Tampa Bay Luxrays, they've got a pretty sturdy team, maybe not even the best team for this particular matchup, but I know they're more comfortable, and I'm more confident in their Luxrays' ability to utilize such a team. So that's why I'm feeling more confident with the Luxrays.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is just waiting for the Haunters to find their groove, figure out what the team wants to do, but I don't think they figured that out this week, and I'm going to have to pick the Luxrays as well.
The Luxrays has shown some superior prep the last 2 weeks as far as being able to understand what your opponent struggled with. Last week he was playing against an opponent that had on his roster 4 ice weaknesses, with also a freeze dry weakness in terms of the Mega Slowbro. Last week we saw him masterfully be able to switch in the Absol at the correct moment to be able to absorb a knockoff hit, which of course Mega Absol would not lose an item, but also gains with the ability justified an extra attack stat boost, which gave him the necessary power to move forward. The Luxrays did have a bit of a gaffe in terms of understanding the variance of Sucker Punch versus E-Speed in the matchup, but overall,
I noted that too.
But overall, I actually asked him about it. He said he just made a mistake, and you were actually the one that commented on his video about that. Actually told me that you were the reason why he understood it going forward, and it's good for him to know and understand that variant going forward. It wasn't that big of a gaffe in terms of the whole aspect of the matchup. Knockoff would have done about 15 to 25% more damage overall in that situation. It would have been guaranteed damage versus Sucker Punch being abstract in that situation. But at the end of the day, he still put in a dominating show. By utilizing and understanding that he needed to run ice coverage, he ran ice coverage on Latios. He ran ice coverage on Absol, which remember, Mega Absol does have a 110 base special attack. It's not weak in that department. And also running the Ice Beam on Porygon Z. He showcased that he understands that whenever his opponent is super exposed to one thing, exploit the exposure. And that's what we saw from him last week. And we haven't seen that type of thorough match prep from Hampshire yet. As far as, both of their matches, and like I said, the entire analyst crew is in the corner of the Lux Rays this week. So, sorry, Gofies. This is the first time this season that we've had a complete 100% vote in favor of one coach.
All right. And so our next matchup here is the Colorado Rapidash versus the Orlando, Magikarps. That's what I thought. Okay. So in this matchup, what are you looking at, Zero?
So when I look at this matchup, last week, or I was with the previous matchup, I was talking about how the Hunters haven't really gained my confidence yet. They haven't really won me over. And this matchup has just the opposite. With the Colorado Rapidash, they've completely won me over. Having watched both weeks, I'm confident in Swami's ability to play, to make the right calls, and then in the team building process, to bring some heat, to think outside the box, to counter, some of the most powerful mons that the opponent could bring. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing a lot of promise from the Colorado Rapidash. So regardless of the team, the Rapidash we're going to be going up against this week, it would have taken a lot for me to choose them over Swami.
Absolutely, man. Swami has a lot of these matches, man. Some of these matches are actually like work for me to watch. I'm sure Lynx can agree, but watching the Colorado match the last 2 weeks, man, it's been fun. It's been fun. I literally, when I was watching that match this week, and the Pittsburgh Peaches had the gaff of all gaffs, going from one fire weakness to another fire weakness. Going from a ×2 fire weakness to a ×4 fire weakness. Now, granted, it wasn't. You wouldn't expect. If it was ladder, you would never expect. Mew to have that flat fire move in that situation. But whenever you are a team that carries a Scizor, it's a bit more of a you should probably expect it. Not like a guarantee expect, obviously, but at the same time, it was one of those where it was like, oh gosh, what are we doing here, And that was whenever he switched into a flamethrower from Mew, I was like getting out of my seat, like pumped. I was like, oh snap, son! I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there are some matches that are like work for me to watch, and then there was this one that was just fun for me to watch. 2 weeks in a row, Colorado has showcased that they understand what they're going to be doing each and every week. Whenever he used Continental Crush on a Virizion to take out Pelipper, I knew I was looking at something at a coach who was special and knew and was going to utilize the cheapskate format that is Generation 7. And I'm not saying that as a jest or anything like that. The Generation 7 is one flawed mechanic right there for counter team battles. It makes it just so much of a cluster mess. It just, with all these Z moves out there, everything is so just messed up and random at the moment. And Colorado is going to utilize those every single week. This week he plays an opponent that has a serious exposure to, if I remember correctly, it's still again the issue of ice exposure that he had last week. I haven't seen anything corrective done yet by Orlando to fix that, and so we're going to see if that happens once again. I expect a Sub-Zero slammer this week from someone on Colorado.
That would be quite the sight to see too.
I love that move. I love that move. It's so pretty. Lynx, who are you looking at in this match?
I'm looking at Colorado as well, as long as with the majority of our analysts, it's 7-1 favor Colorado.
Oof. Please prove us wrong, Orlando. Like I said, anytime we're ever talking about a coach in this kind of fashion, we're obviously utilizing what we've seen, but not doing so to be a bully or be mean or anything like that. It's just we're having to pick somebody who we think is going to win the matchup based on what we see, based on what we know. That's all it is.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's our opinions.
So eat it.
All right, so in our next matchup, which I think is going to be a very good one to watch, Minnesota versus Maryland, A-Drive versus Under the Radar. You have two coaches, which I think, they're both very creative. They both have the experience. They both have championships. What's this match going to come down to, Zero?
Oh man, this match is going to be one of the best contenders for a game of the week. We have two of the upper echelon battlers in this league going at it. I remember watching the Maryland Torterrapins and seeing how this team can take some pretty non-traditional like offensive Pokemon, build a hyper offense team out of it. I can see a nice defensive core if necessary with the Vikavolt. I see that sort of balanced multiple modes sort of team as well. But I ended up going with the Minnesota Vikavolt primarily because of Infernape and Ninetales, which together, you get speed control if you run Scarf of one of them and maybe Life Orb with the other, something like that. That sort of offensive presence alone is posing such a huge problem to the Terrapins. That said, it wasn't incredibly convincing for me one way, because I have a ton of faith that the Maryland Terrapins are going to be able to bring some counters to that. They're going to be able to look at Dan's team and see, oh, I am really weak to these Pokemon. Oh, I don't have a lot to deal with these Pokemon, and come up with something special that can help deal with that. So I'm really not 100% sure what to expect. I'm leaning towards Vikavolt strictly based on the team advantage, but both these coaches are skilled, and it's going to be a fun match to watch.
You know, my big thoughts going forward, I love Dan's team in a certain respect, but at the same time, like, I would have never actually tried to get a Slush Rush Pokemon on his roster, especially one like Alolan Sandslash. I would much rather have Beartic 9 times out of 10. And it's because Alolan Sandslash is an X4 weak Pokemon to fire. It's a Pokemon that is definitely a huge detriment to your team. Anytime you add on an X4 weak Pokemon that doesn't have legendary base stat totals, you know, I just feel like it's kind of like a risk play to your roster in many ways. That's why it's one of the big reasons why you don't see Parasect in leagues. I mean, have you ever seen Parasect in leagues, guys? Come on now. No, I'm not being a jerk right there when it comes into Parasect. I love Parasect in theory, but at the same time, there are certain Pokemon that I feel like are just, you know, flash and pan Pokemon. And I mean, I'm sure one week he's gonna be able to make Alolan Sandslash work. But, you know, I know A-Draft. He worked his entire draft to try and find a way to get a Slush Rusher after he made the bold play to get the Alolan Ninetales. So what that does for him is that he doesn't really have a bulky fairy. Sure, Alolan Ninetales is fast and can get up in Aurora Veil, but at the same time, it's at the detriment of many of his own Pokemon, because unless he starts putting safety goggles on stuff, nothing on his roster is really enjoying coming into the snow, and nobody wants to come into the hail for a little bit. And that's kind of my thing with Dan's team, is that I feel like Under the Radar is going to exploit that little chip damage that he's going to be able to pull up against himself if he brings in that kind of situation. Last week we saw that Mega Metagross was able to Mega Metagross wasn't even used, but I'm saying, like, the prep really I think in a lot of ways got Dan off his game a little bit, and rightly so. It's Mega Metagross. It's a pain in the butt. And I feel like while Kelly doesn't really have that one over-centralizing Pokemon, I feel like we're going to see something pretty special from Kelly this week. It's going to come down to the wire when it's all said and done. But I just feel like when you have Mega Charizard X and your opponent doesn't really have a traditional fairy, I got to give the edge. I got to give the edge to Maryland in this situation.
I'd say, what's your Blizzard switching? What's your Blizzard switching?
Well, exactly. But I mean, at the same time, you know, that's just you're right. I mean, Blizzard's not fun to switch into, but at the same time, you know, it's one move, man. I mean, it's one move on a Pokemon that's made of glass. I mean, sure, if you get an Aurora Veil up, it can take a few more hits, but at the end of the day, man, I mean, you know, it's not Alolan Ninetales is never going to be a top-tier league Pokemon. It's just the way it is. But it's just my thoughts. That's just my thoughts going forward.
I'm tempted to disagree. The only thing really threatening it is probably Bullet Punch from Lucario. But I think between Infernape and Alolan Ninetales, you pretty much cover every single thing that the Terrapins could bring, and you outspeed it too. So I think, in a sense, also with regards to times 4 weaknesses, I think they are interesting from a team building standpoint, because if you have enough times 4 weaknesses, for example, Alolan Sandslash and Alolan Ninetales, they do force coverage moves in a certain way. They do kind of impose a 4 move slot syndrome on opposing teams. So I think, despite having these 4 times weaknesses, they're actually going to make team prep a little bit more difficult for the Terrapins this week. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, man. I mean, you were talking about, like, what would be the ultimate, you know, like the thing that's designed to switch into a Blizzard on this opposing roster. If I had to take a stab at it, I would probably just say Eviolite Lickitung would be my best bet in that situation. I mean, that's probably going to be his preferred switch in, if you will. Maybe a Jealous in the right situation. I haven't run the calc off the top of my head, but you're right as far as what actually naturally switches into this matchup. I mean, you know, it's not beautiful, but at the end of the day, I feel like Kelly's got just a little bit of that overall just synergized just edge that I feel like. And he's also on a winning streak. When you're on a winning streak, it's hard to break that, because you go into a match with like an extra 2 inches on your membrane. If you know what I'm saying, you just feel a little bit bigger than you actually are. You know, it's weird how that works out. But Lynx,
interesting.
Lynx, who are you picking in this one, Lynx?
I am going with Maryland both of these guys have insane prep when it comes down to any battle that they do. But I've watched Kelly over the past year or so, and his prep, it just seems to be on another level when it comes to these draft leagues. So I have to give him the advantage just in that regard.
He's paced.
And
he's calm and collected, man. I mean, you know what
that
else do you
too.
want?
Like nothing seems to rattle him.
Yeah, I mean,
The analysts have a 5-3 in favor of the Maryland Terrapins.
Dan, we love you. Don't hunt us down and destroy our careers. we want you to do well, buddy. It's just that, you know, like I said, the analysts as a whole have a little bit of an edge towards your opponent. Please don't kill us.
All right. Our second to last matchup here is the Seattle Star Raptors versus the Waterloo Sauce Bucks. Who do you have here, Midnite?
So for this one, I'm gonna have to go with the Seattle Star Raptors, and that's just because I've been really impressed with Gearhart's play thus far. The matchup itself isn't too partial, one way or the other for me. But again, Gearhart is one of those coaches that's kind of slowly been gaining my trust. Maybe not to the same extent as Swami has, but I just have a lot of faith in Gearhart this upcoming week. The Sauce Bucks have a lot to offer from an offensive standpoint. They definitely do, and especially in last week up against Kelly and the Maryland Terrapins, they put on quite a show. I was really impressed with how they played, but I don't think they're going to be able to break through a lot of the defense that Gearhart can bring.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little bit of a similar kind of great. It's an interesting matchup in my opinion. I'm going for Seattle in this one as well. You know, Old School Sin played a lot better of a matchup this last week. He didn't look as rusty, as off. We didn't see any of the double fake out mishaps like of the first week. Double fake out. And, you know, and like I said, there were certain things out there that just that first week that just really threw me off. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you know, what are we doing here, buddy? You know, and then when he played last week, he really looked a lot more solid, and it came down to a wire, you know, versus Maryland. But at the end of the day, I give it to, you know, it's gonna be a matchup where Gearhart, I feel like, is just gonna have some control of the battle like he has the last 2 weeks. He's had control. That's the thing that you got to understand, is that, you know, whenever he was playing against the offensive pressure of the Miami team, he wasn't rattled and destroyed by it. When he was playing last week against the Hampshire Haunters roster, you know, and he was able to once again just put full control of the roster out there, and that's what I'm going to be seeing, man. I feel like Gearhart's going to be able to just bring in the right plays, the right time, low and marrow X Sylveon, and just rock this biscuit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I am definitely going to agree with you that Gearhart has played amazingly over the last 2 weeks, just controlling the battle, keeping, you know, his calm. And with Old School Sin, he's played some great battles. My issue with Sin, and it's not really a knock on his play style, but he just doesn't think one step ahead. He plays as is, and it's kind of like, what's your next move if this doesn't go right? And until that, you know, changes, or until, you know, until something has to change with that play style or that process. Right. And I have to give the advantage to Gearhart.
One might even say Gearhart's he's got really good future sight. Shout out to his bronze song.
In general, you're correct. You're correct, though. You have to play Pokemon like you play chess. You know, you're trying to put your opponent into a corner. You want to put them in a situation where you know what they're going to click next turn. You know, if you can put your opponent into a situation where you know what they're going to pick, guess what? You win. It's hard not to whenever you know what your opponent's going to do. You know, I mean, you know, and that's what we're going to see going forward. You know, we've got an opponent that I have, you know, in Old School Sin, that I just feel like isn't going to be able to put the control factor off of Gearhart. Gearhart's going to be able to once again have control in this matchup, and it's going to end up resulting in the win. And that's why the analysts are once again, you know, going against the Waterloo. Last week we saw 7-1 odds against Waterloo, and this week we're seeing another 7-1 odds against Waterloo. Old School Sin, though, prove us wrong this week, man. Prove us wrong.
All right, and our final matchup here is the Pittsburgh Pichus versus the San Diego Charizards. Who do you have in this one, Zero?
In this particular matchup, I've got the San Diego Charizards, and again, that's mostly because of the coach. I just have more faith in the coach of the San Diego Charizards. Obviously, definitely got the resume and the record to prove that the Charizards can play well, they can win. But at the end of the day, the Pichus are rusty. They've been playing like they're rusty. I'm not sure if they have it 100% together. And I think the prep is going to be in the Charizard's favor. I think the battling, understanding of the mechanics, just thinking ahead is going to be in favor of the Charizard. So for this one, to me, it didn't even really matter too much what the matchup was. It's not like the Pichus have a bad team by any means. It's not like they don't have threats for the Charizards. It's not like they don't have answers to some of the Charizard's threats. It just comes down to the trainers themselves for me.
Right.
Absolutely.
And last week I said Nexus has to have that moment to where in the battle he just stops and take a breath, and he did that. But I felt like it was a little too late because he got off to that rocky start, and I think he needs to get off to a better start in his battles to, finally pick up that win. But I don't think this week is that week. I have San Diego winning this one.
You're absolutely correct. When you go back and watch his last 2 weeks, he's had those kind of moments where he's counted himself out. First off, he's relied a little too much on Quagsire, which Quagsire is great for helping you stop your opponent's team. It is not good for helping you win in counter team formats as far as being the catalyst Pokemon that he's tried to use it for. He's tried to use Quagsire 2 weeks in a row to give himself breath, to give himself an opportunity, to force his opponent to give him some space. And really, it's just ultimately led to his downfall in the last 2 weeks to a certain extent. You can argue it more so this last week than the first week. After Scizor went down, he actually did fight back pretty hard because Scizor went down early and was his first loss, but he played a lot better after Scizor went down. The big thing this last week, though, was that, I feel like he's trying to force Lele into the action a little too early in the matchups. It's one thing that you got to understand about Lele is that Lele is not a Pokemon that you want to throw out there, turn 7. You want to throw it out there turn 15 and just say what you want to do, Biscuit Head. That's Nexus has not been doing that yet. He's been trying to force it in there turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and then pivot it out over and over again. But there's no advantage for his team doing that. When at least from what I've seen, I haven't seen any real reason why his team would want to actually put that exposure too early. And I think that this is where it comes down to with the Pittsburgh Pichus. Nexus is a good battler. He's struggling right now. What he's struggling with right now is adapting to the Gen 7 format, which a lot of coaches are out there, myself included in certain formats. These Z moves just are crazy. They're weird to understand, and they add a whole new aspect to your battle prep and whatnot. Pichus are going to figure this out probably mid-season, but this week I got to go with the Charizards because we talked after watching Vump's match and talking with him about what his process was. I feel like he would have been able to pull back a win at the end of that match. If that match would have gone up, if that match was on Smoke, was on Showdown, he may have been able to win that match. That's what I'm trying to say. But the match was sadly on Cartridge where he has to work the timer. So as long as Vump goes out and doesn't use the full timer, this week, and basically put himself in the corner where he was last week, where the timer killed himself by accident, I think he wins this match pretty easily.
And our analysts agree here, 6-2 in favor of Vump.
Yeah. Now, when we go over the actual overall roster for last week, I don't have this actually pulled up, but last week we look at what actually happened as far as the actual analyst total scores. And let's just display this for like about 5 seconds. I just want to hear a little bit of gloriness right here. We're gonna read.
Well, someone in this call I think had an inside track. Maybe they paid off some coaches to take a loss or something, but someone in this call went 9-3.
Oh, absolutely. And it felt really good to go 9-3 last week, guys. I'm not gonna lie. 9-3 last week for this guy right here. So just saying, I'm due for like a 5-7 week. Just saying, I'm gonna go 5-7 this week. Lynx and Midnite actually did really well as also. They tied for third last week, both going 7-5. So we do have a pretty good inside information on this. I'm gonna try to get in the future title previous week scores as well as total week scores going up for these parts from the rest of these series. But guys, like said, for the analysts the analysts out there, we're trying our best to be able to showcase to you guys and give you kind of an overlay so far of what we're going to see in these matchups. As always, from the rundown, this is myself, Lebanon, aka Warfare 120, Lynx Forte, and we want to thank our very special guest, Midnite Zero, for being in this call today and giving us kind of an outsider opinion as to what we're seeing as far as what it's always nice to see fresh take because at the end of the day, I can zone in on one thing about a team and just harp on that for the entire season, and I'll do that probably at some point. And I love having an outside opinion. Thank you for stopping by today, Lynx. Not Lynx, Midnite.
Thank you guys for having me. It was plenty of fun, Chad.
Absolutely. And like I said, guys, always remember to check out the battles this weekend on Saturday. And always, guys, be here to show all those coaches love, support, and subscribes, and likes, and comments, and love, and stuff. Peace out.